Hi, glad you could find time to join me for part two of our series regarding the subject of surviving relegation. In part one, most of the things that we looked at, I think, were more tactically concerned or things that were in a lot of ways dependent on the players and the coaches. But today we're also going to add a bit of what the administrators can do, what the corporate guys in the club can do, try and help the club to stay up. And that is why today we've gone a bit corporate in our outfit. Let's see how it goes. If you might have observed over the years, when clubs come up, one of the things, because usually the clubs that struggle, battle relegation, usually are clubs that have just come up, clubs that are just won promotion into particular leagues. And one thing that they struggle to do usually is to keep their best players, and that's where I'm going to start from. To survive relegation, you must be able to keep your best players. The players that helped you to stay up usually have the quality that it takes, that brought you up, usually have the quality that it takes to play in a particular league. As long as you can just add one or two for the sake of maybe experience as well as the guidance. But then if the players that have brought you up actually have the experience, then they wouldn't really be need to dip into the market so much. But obviously you always have to go into the market to strengthen. But the key thing is that you must keep your best players. Now, keeping your best players does not just mean keeping the guys that brought you up. Sometimes it's also about just giving them better terms or better conditions, so that they stay at the club. Because what happens is that there are a lot of vultures that are going to come up, if I may use that term. There are a lot of other teams that actually like what you have or like the players that have brought you up. And so to be able to fend these off, sometimes you need to give them better conditions of service. Sometimes it's just about a contract extension. If there's something that a player wants from a club, if they are going to give their best, is that they need a certain kind of security, and that security comes in the form of a contract extension. Whilst the best security is performances on the pitch of play, but a contract extension really goes a long way in ensuring that players give you their A game whenever they get to the pitch. So give them contract extension, give them better conditions. At times, it's also about if you're going to go into recruitment, you have to recruit with specificity. I spoke about specificity when I was talking about transfers in the mid-season transfers in the other video that I did. So you have to recruit with specificity. I remember with specificity, you're looking at players that are going to play a specific role in the club, players that are going to address a specific problem that you might have identified, or players that are going to take the club from one level onto a high level that you are hoping to get onto. It could be from within your academy, and that's usually a local solution, or it could be elsewhere, but it should be one that actually embraces the ethos of the club and is able to hit the ground up and running. Very key as well in keeping some of the best players or recruiting the right quality of players if you're going to stay up, is that you must ensure that your spine is sorted out. Your spine must be sorted out. Look, we have seen blanket signings at times from certain clubs, and you wonder why they are making those kind of signings. But really, a club must be looking to sort out its spine. By spine, we mean, look, there's always that structure that you're going to have as a club. Key players in key positions. If you're talking about a good goalkeeper, that is fair enough. Maybe two centre backs, someone in the midfield, or even one or two people up front. Basically, in all the structures of the team, you need to have people that you're going to rely on, and then just bring on others to try and support the core of this team. And so you must ensure that the spine is right, and to ensure that the spine is right, you must keep your best players. You must sign the right quality of players. The other thing is that you need to play to your strengths. Look, regardless of the quality of opposition that you are going to have, no matter how better they seem to be, or no matter how well they might be doing, you have to remember that you equally have your own strengths, and it's these strengths that you must bring to the fore. There's a temptation always when you're playing a bigger team or a better team per se. There's always a temptation of only concentrating on foiling what they bring, or only concentrating on defending, so that you get away with something in a game. But trust me, there's always a power that lies within. There's always a power that lies within your own strengths, and this is what you should look to bring out in any particular game. Maximize on your capacity. Look, coaches know the quality of each and every player they have in the team. Equally, players know the qualities that they have as individuals and equally what they have as a collective. So it's about bringing these qualities to the fore and ensuring that you get the most out of these qualities once you bring them to the fore. Sometimes it's about relying on what you know works for you. Remember in part 1 I spoke about set pieces. So if you know that set pieces, for example, are a point of strength, maximize on them. Frequently perfect them, frequently work on them. Because remember, the mother, grandfather, of brother, sister, or whatever it is of teaching is repetition. So repeat those strengths that you have to attain automatism, and once automatism is attained, it becomes gives you a better chance of staying up. You also have to create your own situations of advantage in terms of relying on your strengths. When you have discussions with players or with coaches, sometimes they'll bring up these things. It was dependent on a game situation, or this and that happened because of the game situation. My argument has always been that whilst game situations will happen, in a lot of ways you actually create those game situations. So you must be able to create those game situations using your own strengths. Football is about responding to a particular situation or making the other team respond to a particular situation. What do I mean? When you're responding to a particular situation, it means the other team has created a situation which you have to respond to. Then when they are responding to it, means you are the ones that have created this situation. You're always better off if they are the ones that are responding to what you create, because it means they are going to be reactive whilst you are being proactive. And so as they are reacting to what you have put across of them or in front of them, you're already thinking of something else that you can do. So it's about playing to your own strengths if you're going to give yourselves a chance of staying up in a relegation fight. Obviously, if we're talking about maximizing on your own strengths, then there's also a component that should involve weaknesses. What involves weaknesses? You must ensure that you punish your opponent based on their weaknesses. And this is where the quality of your scouts comes in as a club. The quality of your opposition scouts comes in as a club. Your quality of your performance analysts as a club comes in. Look, no matter how strong they are, they equally have weaknesses. And so it is those weaknesses that you must bounce on. Sometimes a weakness in a particular club can be, for example, in a moment of transition, in a moment of negative transition, especially for the times that are the teams that are used to having a lot of the possession. Most of those teams are actually at their weakest point the moment that they just lose possession, and that is something that you can capitalize on as a weakness. What that means usually is that you may have to be the ones to rely on counter attacks. We have seen several times how teams that don't really like or don't usually have most of the possession, they go ahead and win matches, chiefly because they relied on quick counter attacks. They get the possession, they use it accordingly. So in those moments, identify what those moments are in your opponent, and once you identify those moments of weaknesses or those areas of weakness, then you maximize on them, you capitalize on them. Another point of weakness that you might be able to capitalize on in your opponent is that there are teams that like to overplay. Remember earlier on, in part 1, I had spoken about there are teams that want to play just above their penalty box. And if I can just go back to the diagram that I used, which I think it will be very handy for me going forward between now and the time we get the tactical ball that we desire to use. Look, there are teams that want to start build up from here. Whilst that could be a point of strength for them, it could equally be a point of weakness. If you are able to get the ball from them as they try to build up from here, it means the next thing you're doing is you're already in their penalty box. So as they try to overplay, just ensure that you set pressing traps. For example, you entice them to try and play the ball in certain areas and not in areas where they're going to hit you, but in areas where you can actually hit them and use that to your advantage. Sometimes there are also teams that want to over rely on certain players. If you remember in the AFCON 2021, Egypt versus Nigeria, you saw that Egypt were over reliant on Mo Salah, and Nigeria just managed to mark him out of the game, and they couldn't get the most out of them. there are times that you'll be playing a particular team, and maybe their player's strength is playing around this area or around this zone, playing in these particular zones. So if you're able to deny them the space in playing in these particular zones, then it means you're taking them out of the game, basically. So it's a point of strength for them, for example, but the moment you follow it, it becomes a point of weakness. Beyond that, expose their weaknesses once they have the ball, and once they don't have the ball. If you are able to do that to your opponent, then it means you are hitting them where it matters the most. And if you're hitting them where it matters the most, then surely you are giving yourselves a chance to go ahead and win games. Moving forward, I think it's also important that you learn to classify or categorize matches. I'll give an example of, say, the Zambian League. The Zambian League, top leagues, the lower tier leagues, you have 18 teams in a league, and so of those 18 teams, it means if you're going to break it down, you're going to play 34 matches, 17 away, 17 at home. Further breaking that down, you find that you can break this league into quarters. The first quarter of, say, 8 games, the next quarter of 9 games, the next quarter of 9 games, and the last quarter of 8 games, or something close to that. What happens is when you classify a league in that order, you will see that in any cluster of matches, there are teams that you are certainly going to beat, depending on what you have to offer. There are teams that with certainty you know that they are going to give you trouble, and then there are also teams where you're not really sure about. So for the teams where you're really certain what you're able to give, to get the maximum results, go out and give it your best shot. Maximize on the number of goals scored, get your clean sheet, maximize so that you get your confidence and you get the belief back in the team, things of that sort. It's also about getting a specific number of points. Usually in any league, if you get the number of points that are equivalent to the number of games that you have played, mostly you are going to survive. If you play 34 games and you get 35 points, usually you are going to survive, unless there are any dramatic happenings. I remember in my time with Mpulungu Harbour, well, we played 34 games, we got 34. It wasn't enough in the end, but then the team that finished above us was just above us by a point. But in the season before that, you would have survived that, and over the years this has happened. If you remember, even the Zambian League, when they used to play about 30 games, when it was a 16 team league, if you got 30 points, 31 points, then you had survived, unless the other teams are just good enough. But those usually are seasons which would actually classify to be exceptions to the normal. So you can target a certain number of points per quarter. Classify your opponents, which ones are the weaker ones, which ones are the stronger ones, and see how you strategize, which matches you are really going to go for it, which matches you are really going to try to be conservative and maybe just try and hit on a counter to give the sucker punch. And these are just types of tactics to use. As always, I would love to get your feedback on this subject and any other subject. Tell me what you want us to discuss next, what areas of improvement you would want to see, as we try and educate ourselves about each other, about the game, and just make it interesting, really. For today, I think the final piece that you need to use, which many might agree with or might not agree with, but I still believe it's something that you can use to try and survive the drop, and that is the use of home advantage. I know a lot of people will say in the modern game there is no home advantage, but really? How many times do Nkana lose at home? How many times do Liverpool lose at home? How many times do Man City lose at home? How many times do Zesco United in Zambia lose at home? Mamelodi Sundowns in South Africa, Al Ahly in Egypt? How many times do these teams lose at home? They don't really lose at home because they take advantage of home ground advantage. And if there are teams that should really be taking advantage of home advantage, it's teams that are battling with relegation. Look, you have a lot of advantage when you're playing at home, because usually your fans will usually outnumber the opposing fans, and that's the first point of call. You have the 12th player, which the other team might not have. You have the fans that are going to spur you on. What their fans bring as well is the right ambience or the right atmosphere. Look, even on a gloomy day, it could be a gloomy day. They'll make it feel like it's a sunny day. On a day that is very cold, they'll make it feel like it's a day of warmth. On a pitch that is waterlogged, they'll make you feel as if the pitch is okay for playing, selling football. The other thing that home advantage or home comforts give you is that the pitch well, the dimensions well, how you can stretch it, how you can compress it, in which patches are okay, in which patches are not okay, and and matters of that sort. And largely, even though people want to run away from this, I think it's still a factor. When you're playing at home, sometimes you get what are called home team decisions. Look, the home fans have got the capacity to influence the referee. It's just a factor. We are not questioning the integrity of the referees, but look, it's very rare that when you're playing at home, you're going to have decisions go against you. Most of the decisions are going to be in your favor. That is one other thing that you can use to survive relegation, is about making your home comforts count for you. So just a quick recap on what I was looking at today. Number one, you have to ensure that you keep your best players, the ones that helped you to stay up, for example, or the ones that have kept you in a league. Beyond that, it's not just about keeping them, but it's equally about making the right signings, following the principles of specificity. Obviously, we say that you have to play to your own strengths, because they're always going to give you an advantage. You also have to deny the opposition from using their own strengths, as well as countering on their weaknesses, or rather making the most out of their weaknesses, because no matter how big a team they are, there's always a chink in the arm, and it's about identifying what that weakness is, and you strike on it. How to identify that weakness? It's important that you engage opposition team scouts, and using your own scouting network, get as much information as possible about your opponents and use that to your advantage. It's allowed, it's acceptable, and that's how the biggest teams in the world have made it. It's about knowing what your opponent is going to offer and what they may not offer, and acting accordingly. It's also about staying up. It's also about classifying matches or categorizing matches into phases, knowing which phase might be difficult and preparing for it accordingly, knowing which phase might be lighter and maximizing on it. Also, it's about making home comforts count. Beyond this, you remember what we spoke about in part one. The video is up there. You can go back and look at it. Beyond all this, there are also other factors that you may want to consider, which might be specific from one club onto another, from one team onto another, depending on depending on your geography, depending on the quality of coaches you have, the quality of players that you have, the quality of administrators that you have, and any other macro and micro factors that you may want to consider. But I think these 10 that I've looked at in the 2-part series are very key if you are going to survive relegation, apart from any other factor that you may want to think of. Let me know what you think once more. What we can share, what we can discuss going forward. And as always, I thank you so much for your feedback and for engaging me. Let's keep it going. I hope to see you next week at the same time. Until then, bye bye.